Hey everyone, Mr. Evans here with your pre-recorded live lesson for Unit 7, Lesson 5 on high altitude living. This lesson just wants to go over how gene flow and gene frequency can assist with natural selection and how organisms' survival rate and what's called their fitness rate, meaning how fit are they to survive in an environment, can encourage certain genes in a population of creatures to be encouraged. Those alleles, those specific traits, allow a better chance of survival in a certain environment. Now, when the word fitness is used in biology, it doesn't necessarily mean, you can run on the cardio treadmill for 5 hours. Fitness means, is that individual well suited to survive in that environment? As an extreme example, a shark's fitness to survive in the ocean is really good. A human's fitness to survive in the ocean is not really good. Even a human who is in great physical shape is not as fit to survive in the ocean as a shark. We are not adapted to live in the ocean. A shark is. So that's what fitness means. Fitness is improved a little bit over, little tiny steps at a time over many generations, because certain alleles, certain characteristics are going to make an individual better suited for that environment. And those changes can happen through random mutation, and then that individual is better able to survive, better able to gather food, to hide from predators, or whatever, and as a result, that individual has a better chance of reproducing and passing those characteristics on to the next generation. And as a result, over many generations, that trait, that characteristic spreads throughout the population over hundreds and thousands of generations. As a result of that happening many different times, many different traits, the environment shapes the species. A species adapts to fit to its environment over long spans of time. And when you accumulate enough changes over a long enough span of time, you eventually, slowly, over long spans of time and spans of change, can have two completely different species where there was just one before. If there's a population of goats, mountain goats, and they get separated, the whole population of goats just gets split right down the middle by a landslide or some kind of natural disaster, or maybe they just migrate away from each other. Maybe they each just go down different slopes of the mountain and go into different environments. You check back a million years later, those goats, where they were just one species a million years ago, could be significantly different. Maybe maybe half the goats went up into the mountain ranges and got better adapted to living at high altitudes, and maybe the other half went down into the valley and became better adapted at living in the valley at a lower altitude. Keeping in mind that individual goats don't change over the course of their lifetime. They don't just grow certain things on their bodies that make them better at surviving in a particular environment. It happens in terms of the species, slow changes over the generations, over many generations. That's survival of the fittest, adaptation, natural selection. You've probably all heard these words before. And this is how species evolve and how species change. But what we're going to talk about now isn't necessarily a change that in the short term results in a new species. We're going to talk about how certain individuals within the same species can take on tiny different traits that just help them survive a little bit in a certain area. And the example they're using in this slide, or this lesson, is the Tibetan people in Nepal. which is located in the Himalayas, which is the highest mountain range on Earth. So everyone probably knows that Mount Everest is the highest mountain on planet Earth, and the people who live in that mountain range over a long period of time have taken on a trait that allows them to do better in a thinner atmosphere. As you go up in altitude, the air gets thinner. Oxygen content goes down. And after a certain point, if you get high enough in altitude, it becomes fatal. There just isn't enough oxygen to survive. Well, the Tibetan people over many, many generations have a characteristic that has spread throughout their population that allows them to handle that a little bit better. They have taken on an adaptation that affects their red blood cells, that allows their red blood cells to absorb more oxygen. And the gene that allows them to do that is called the EPAS1 gene. Don't ask me why they named it that, who knows. But anyways, this is an example of a characteristic that has increased in frequency. Remember that word from a couple lessons ago, gene frequency. The frequency of this allele, and here I am using the words gene and allele interchangeably, that you're not supposed to do. The frequency of this allele is much more prevalent in the Tibetan people of this area because it gives them a survival advantage. When you live at high altitude, being able to breathe helps keep you alive, right? Which means the individuals who have this gene over the centuries have prospered. They have been able to survive better. They have been able to reproduce and pass on that gene to their children. So now this particular gene is very prevalent in this particular group of people. Makes sense, right? If you go just, 1,000 miles away down into China, that gene is not as prevalent because those people live at lower altitudes and they don't need it. It doesn't really do anything to help them. And it's possible, this is speculation, but it's possible that at lower altitudes, having this gene could do something that could actually hinder them. And it's kind of like a give-take proposition. One might argue, well, why doesn't everybody just have this characteristic? It couldn't hurt, right? Couldn't hurt. Well, everything's a trade-off. There's no such thing as a free lunch. So maybe there's something about this allele that at lower altitudes is not beneficial. I'm not sure what that could be, but it's possible. But you have to look at everything in biology as a trade-off. At a higher altitude, this allele gives a survival advantage, but there may be a cost to that survival advantage. But the benefit outweighs the cost when you're at a higher altitude. Maybe that's not the case when you're at a lower altitude. You have to look at every characteristic, every adaptation as a trade-off. Does this characteristic help me more than it hurts me given a specific environment? So keep that in mind. Everything in biology costs energy, no matter what it is. And the question is, are you getting a good return on the energy you spend to power a certain characteristic? If the answer is yes, that's a survival advantage. If the answer is no, it's not. That's breaking it down pretty simply. Something else that this lesson mentions here really quick has to do with another group of people on the other side of the world living in the Andes. So Tibet is in Asia, okay? The Andes are in South America. But again, it's mountains, and there are people there living at high altitudes, okay? But these people do not carry that same gene, but they still live at high altitudes and they do very well. So what is allowing these people to have that survival advantage at high altitudes? Well, they don't have that gene that allows for increased oxygenation of the blood, but they do have slightly larger hearts. Their hearts are just a little bit larger. There's a characteristic that has just made their hearts a bit bigger. And as a result, they can pump more blood through their bodies. Their blood circulation is just a little bit better. So while their blood has the same concentration of oxygen in it as someone living at a lower altitude, they can pump that blood through their systems faster. So they can deliver more oxygen at a faster rate. So in the end, it's kind of the same thing as the people in Tibet. It's just happening through a different mechanism. Instead of just having, more oxygen in the blood, they're just moving the oxygen through the body faster. So the end result is the same. So the lesson to kind of take away from this comparison is that there isn't one correct path towards evolutionary success. There's no right way. There's no one way. You can achieve the same outcome through different mechanisms. Okay, so you don't want to look at evolution as kind of like a path towards a finish line where there's like a set progression where like this or that is definitely going to happen. It doesn't work that way. You can get to the same destination through many different paths and it will have the same effect. So while the Tibetan people adapted a certain gene to increase oxygen concentration in their blood, the people in the Andes evolved larger hearts. Their heart's just a little bit larger, so they can transport more blood through their system. Same purpose, get more oxygen to the body, different mechanism. So there's no like end game to evolution, meaning, humans, for example, a lot of people like to say that humans are the pinnacle of evolution. We're like the most evolved life form on the planet. That's not true. That's not true at all. There is no most evolved. It depends on your environment, what you evolve to an environment. A species evolves towards an environment to be better adapted to that environment. And environments can change. Ask the dinosaurs. Dinosaurs were amazingly adapted to their environment. They had been evolving and changing and speciating for hundreds of millions of years. They were big and strong and tough. They were the kings, Dinosaurs ruled the earth. But then, in the span of like a snap, that environment changed. Asteroid came, hit the earth, dust flew up, killed all the plants. Now all of a sudden the dinosaurs that were great on Tuesday in terms of having adapted to their environment were not so great on Friday. All plants started dying. They had no food. Dinosaurs had big bodies. They required a lot of food to live. Now all of a sudden, poof, they start dying off. And all the little tiny things, all the scavengers, all the little critters that could live in holes and hide from the dust storms and didn't require a whole lot of food, now all of a sudden they are much better suited to that particular environment. And they took off. When the dinosaurs were all dead, they could come out of their hidey holes. They weren't going to get eaten by the dinosaurs. They came out, the environment had changed, and they were better adapted for that environment now. Right? And then, again, over many, many long generations and long spans of time, they slowly started to adapt better and better and better to that environment. So evolution is a constantly changing thing. It's constantly being updated. What's good, what's bad is always in flux. And those organisms that have those random mutations that provide a benefit to them living are the ones who are going to thrive, the ones who are going to reproduce, and the ones who are going to increase the frequency of their genes in the species. So I'm going to attach a real quick video here about hemoglobin so you can kind of see how this gene adaptation works in the Tibetan people. But that is going to be it for today. Thanks everyone. And I am going to put the code word on the screen in text at the towards the end of the hemoglobin video. So keep an eye out for that. Okay, and then after the hemoglobin video is done, that's going to be it. So everyone, thanks for watching and have a good day.
All cells need oxygen. It is the essential fuel which is necessary to enable cells to stay alive and to carry out their various activities. Bringing oxygen to the cells requires the uptake of oxygen from the air in the lungs, its transportation in the blood, and its delivery to cells all over the body. The first step is the taking up of oxygen by blood flowing through fine capillaries in the walls of the lungs' air sacs, or alveoli. The oxygen molecules change from their state as a gas freely circulating in the air, dissolving into a solution in the plasma within the capillaries of the alveoli. Once in the solution of the blood, 98% of this dissolved oxygen is taken up by passing red cells, leaving just 2% remaining in the physical solution unattached. Red cells are particularly well suited to transporting oxygen because they contain a special oxygen-binding protein known as hemoglobin. Each molecule of hemoglobin itself contains 4 molecules of heme, an iron-containing pigment, which binds oxygen loosely and reversibly. Hemoglobin that is fully saturated with oxygen is bright red and is called oxyhemoglobin. On the other hand, hemoglobin that is not saturated with oxygen is purplish blue in color and is called deoxyhemoglobin. It is heme which makes it possible for the red cells to pick up oxygen dissolved in the blood, transport it combined with hemoglobin, and release it back into the blood as oxygen in solution, ready for delivery to the various cells of the body. Hemoglobin gives up its oxygen as red cells travel through capillaries in tissues where there is a low content or partial pressure of oxygen. The partial pressure of oxygen represents the level of dissolved oxygen in plasma. As oxygen is released and again is carried in solution, the partial pressure of oxygen in the capillaries becomes greater than the partial pressure of oxygen in the surrounding tissues. This causes oxygen to move out of the capillaries into the tissues and to finally reach the cells. This graph, the oxygen dissociation curve of hemoglobin, shows why hemoglobin is particularly suited to its role in transporting oxygen. The oxygen dissociation curve demonstrates the relationship between the oxygen carried in combination with hemoglobin, the O2 saturation, and the partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood. The sharp upstroke and the flat plateau illustrate how oxygen is released to the tissues over a wide range of conditions. Its shape means that although the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood returning from the lungs and being pumped out by the arteries may be reduced to only 50% of the normal value, say due to lung disease or high altitude, hemoglobin will still be 85% saturated with oxygen.